Hi everyone. Hello everyone in For the Love of Copy. Today is a very exciting day. I'm just making sure the group is open. My name is Belinda Weaver, and today we're going to be talking to Bree Weber about cold pitching. Now, the idea of cold pitching is something that I think gets a lot of us into a bit of a cold sweat, which works really nicely, but it doesn't have to. For Bree, it has transformed her business, and I'm going to be asking Bree to tell us all about that. Now, Bree is actually my confident copywriter in the spotlight. Every month or so, I highlight one of the copywriters in my confident copywriting group and push them into the spotlight, giving them lots of promotion. And this couldn't be better timed because Bree is having a free masterclass on cold pitching. So I've invited her in today to talk a little bit about how it's worked for her, how it's changed her business, and how she cold pitched me and we worked together quite a lot. So I'm going to bring Bree on. Here she comes. Here she comes. Hi, Bree.
Hi.
So I was just telling everyone that you're my confident copywriter in the spotlight, but I want to take a step back before then and ask you to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, who you work with, all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, so I'm kind of weird because I have two brands, two spaces that I work within. So on the one side, I write launch copy, and I work mostly with coaches, course creators, membership makers on all things launches. And then on the other side, I work more in the sort of, I guess, kind of tech or startup space with like SaaS, e-commerce, DTC companies, a lot more focused on conversion copywriting and optimization. Although behind the scenes, in terms of my process, it's exactly the same.
Which is really interesting because, and I think it reflects the nature of copywriting, that a lot of the prep work and a lot of the process is the same, regardless of industry or client, or what you're writing. So that's really interesting and kind of juggling that dual persona. But we can talk about that on another day because I want to get into this idea of cold pitching. So I told everyone that you're in my confident copywriting group, and we shifted our relationship when I remember you came to a coaching call and you were like, I've got this cold pitching process, but it's not working at some point and I need to figure out what the block is. And we talked about some ideas, and you took the ideas further and everyone brainstormed and it was brilliant. And then into my inbox plopped an email from you cold pitching me with all the things we talked about. So you'd really smoothed out the process. And it was a great email. It was the kind of shut up and take my money email.
Thank
And
you.
we've worked together, which is really interesting because I'm a copywriter. I wrote my own copy. Thank you very much. But you are a woman with skills, and collaborating with you and working with you and having you write some copy for me has been exceptional. And so what I want to tap into is that feeling of getting in front of your ideal client and have them get most of the way through your email and already be thinking, shut up and take my money. Like that's an amazing thing. And I think this is an important way we need to shift the way we think about cold pitching, because I never did cold pitching. I was like, I got my marketing sorted. I don't need to do cold pitching, which in all truth was me just going, I'm scared shitless of cold pitching in case I get rejected, in case it doesn't work. So there's a lot that has to happen beyond a simple framework or a complicated framework. But what was happening in your business that led you even to start using outreach marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I had tried kind of off and on, but sort of, as you said, that fear of being rejected or of not getting a response, I would experience that, and a rejection or just not hearing back. And it would just sort of like take me down a notch. And then I just wouldn't try it again for months. And so when I sort of decided I was going to recommit to it and give it a real try, it was at the beginning of this year in kind of January, when everyone's excited about their resolutions and their business goals and thinking, I want more clients, I want more projects, I want more money. And that was exactly the space that I was in. And the traditional marketing that I had tried wasn't really working. So I realized I needed to move into this more experimental testing phase where I just tried something, genuinely gave it a try, and then see what kind of results that I got and iterate based on that. And that was a really different approach than I had taken before.
And I love that willingness to try something out. And especially something that, as you said, you were like, this doesn't, I'm not certain this is going to work. And I've already felt a little bit crappy about this, but I'm going to give it a go. So I love that willingness to try, because it's something we've talked about in Confident Copywriting. If you don't try it, you cannot improve on it, or you cannot decide how it's working for you if you don't even go there.
Yeah.
So I really love that. And what are all the feelings that came up about this? Because this is the head junk that we all got.
Yeah, I used to take days just to kind of like summon up the courage to send something out, especially for the like really cold pitches where this is an absolute stranger. We have no interaction. We don't even follow each other on social media, none of that. So I would just really hype myself up, and I would have to kind of talk myself through it. Like, it's okay if you get rejected. It's okay if you fail. You're going to learn something. You're going to try something else. You're going to be able to use this. But it really was just this panic and almost like almost a nausea to some point that I was going to make a fool of myself in some relatively public way. And that's the scariest feeling.
It is the scariest feeling, when in truth, it's just one email in one inbox with one person. And the worst that can happen is they say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the learning part is a huge piece of that.
Yeah. Yeah, the very first ones that I started doing, I just kind of emulated what I saw happening online, and a lot of them were like investor pitches. So it's a really different, I should never have been using those templates. But I would sort of try to emulate that and not get a response, because that's not the template that I should be using.
Yeah.
It's not effective for what I'm trying to do. And then I would just be so sort of deflated that somebody had read this email, thought I was stupid maybe, or not good enough, or not capable enough, that I didn't even deserve a response. And in reality, there are so many other things that could have happened. It could have been a deliverability issue. They may have never received my email. Maybe it went to spam. Maybe they were so busy. Maybe they thought it was a bot or like a Nigerian prince situation. I don't know. Like, I'm sure whoever this person is or their assistant is, there's a really genuinely valid reason that the email they received from an absolute stranger encouraging them to spend money is not something that they prioritized at that moment in time.
And that's, Brené Brown says the story you tell yourself. And you were just writing, we all do it. We write a lot of stories about why someone has taken action, why our client hasn't instantly replied to our email that we handed the copy deck over, why they haven't paid their invoice, why someone hasn't replied to the email. I love the example in Brené Brown's documentary where as soon as we see the ... of someone replying to a text, where we're just making up stories all the time. But I think we have to recognize those, and as you say, rewrite that narrative in the moment, because it's really, really important. Otherwise it weighs us down.
Yeah. And that was exactly the headspace that I was in when I decided to bring my sort of cold pitches to the Confident Copywriting group to kind of get feedback and critique. Because I actually wrote down, like, here's the story that I'm telling myself, and then here are the facts. And none of the facts did not match the story that I had made up. It was completely off the charts just from my own like fears and insecurities.
And I love that. That's a really good exercise for everyone who's recognizing that something's holding you back. What's the story I'm telling myself? What do I actually know? Right. Take that away, everyone. I think that's really important. So what did it take for your process to start working? What was the shift?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I had to stop using templates that were just kind of out on the internet, sort of fill in the blanks. Because we all know like a copywriting process isn't necessarily Mad Libs. It's meant to inform the strategy or the direction. It isn't just where you plop in a different word, like swap investor for copywriter, like I was trying to do. And I think the other kind of big thing is I had to really shift my thought process from cold pitching being this kind of calculated numbers game to a much more personal, empathetic conversation. You're starting a conversation with someone you genuinely want to work with. And that's a really different approach than just, I'm sending this to 50 people or 5,000 people or whatever that number is for that individual, to say like, here's what I can do. I'm really good. You should hire me. That's not a conversation. That's a request. And it's really hard to have a stranger comply with the request if they don't immediately see value in it. And so I decided I was going to stop doing that. I was going to start a conversation and add value wherever I could.
That is gold. And you're right, that's a completely different feel. And I think it's also related to this idea of cold pitching versus proactive outreach marketing or proactive connection making with your ideal client, because it's something we talk about in Confident Copywriting. Don't wait for people to just find you, because that's what I did. I was like, if I just market enough, people will find me. And they did. So I never had to overcome any fears about that and get proactive. But if you don't like the people that you're working with, and this is not just copywriters, this is all business owners. If you have an ideal client shape that is not being filled by the people you're working with or the people you're attracting to your business, then you need to start getting proactive. Don't wait for those people to just magically discover you because you put a few social posts out. And in order to do that, you have to think about how you can genuinely help someone. And
those are probably the other two things kind of happening in my business. Is one, I wanted to stop working on the types of projects that I had been working on. I was really kind of shifting away from content, but those were kind of the referrals that I was getting. That's where my marketing was kind of coming in. And I hadn't necessarily decided how much I was going to niche down quite yet. So I was in this really kind of limbo sort of space where even if I was marketing myself and being on social and blogging and kind of doing all the inbound things people tell you to do, that may have not worked for me because I didn't have my messaging really dialed in. I didn't have a really, really clear cut set of services that I knew I was offering yet. And I needed clients and projects to figure that out. So I had to go out and find them because it was really highly unlikely that they were just going to kind of come to me when I hadn't been really clear in my marketing and in my messaging for them to be attracted to me.
that's a really interesting challenge. So how did you get your messaging? Like I need clients to get my messaging, but I need messaging to get my clients. How did you work that out?
So I went back to kind of all of those exercises about who is your dream client, to try to figure out who are the people that I really want to work with and what do I kind of want to do with them, or what do I think I want to do with them, or how could I potentially help them from like a goal perspective or maybe a dream state at that point. And trying to decide, okay, so what do these companies or what do these brands have in common? What are the types of things that they need? And the thing that I kept coming up against is all the brands that I wanted to work with, I thought already had really good copy. I was like, they have good copy. They don't need any more copy. Their copy is set. And so that was kind of the first mindset hurdle I had to get across, is just because they have copy now, one, doesn't mean it can't be improved. And two, doesn't mean they don't need more copy. They probably need a ton more copy because they value copy. So that was that first piece, and just recognizing that and realizing that there are probably gaps in their process at some point. And if I can figure out what that is and I can pitch them on that, that's where I'm going to get a conversation started, because I've identified something that has maybe been on their to-do list for a really long time and they haven't been able to kind of tick off, or whatever that kind of big pain point is that I can help them achieve for their larger vision or bigger goals.
That's so good, because, and just to share a little insight on how we're working together, what Bree solved for me was not my ability to write copy, clearly, but there was stuff that I was just going like, oh, I haven't got time for that. And I haven't got the brain space. It's something we talked about a lot, right? Because I am creating all the time. The course, running the course and the coaching and helping people, confident copywriting, resources every week and coaching, blog posts, the daily draft, this group, the newsletter. I'm creating all the time. And when I finally went, I'd like to have a new thing that has all these emails attached, I'm like, I'm done. Like, COVID aside and 2 kids, like I got nothing left. And that's the pain you solved for me. And when you slid into my inbox and you talked about my dog, that was the cincher. And there's obviously a balance between being creepy and paying attention to details. But yeah, there was this kind of, I hadn't even really articulated the pain to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you framed it up and I was like, oh, I'm suddenly aware of the pain. I'm suddenly aware of the solution. I'm suddenly aware of a product. Like it's moving someone from pain aware, solution aware, product aware to most aware, actually quite quickly, extremely effective. And so I just want to go back to something you said, where just because someone's got good copy doesn't mean they don't have other problems that they need solving. Even copywriters need help with their copy sometimes.
Yeah.
And I will also highlight that your work on tone of voice is exceptional. That kind of, it sounds, your tagline, one of your taglines is copy that sounds freakily like you. And it does. It sounds freakily like me, which is brilliant. So what have the payoffs been? Since when did you start this strategy? You said at the beginning of the year. Let's talk about how it's transformed everything for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing I'll say is I did not have immediate success. It was very progressive. So the very kind of first goal was just, I want someone to respond to me. I just want to know that somebody has opened and read this email. And then it was like, okay, I want them to respond. I want them to get on a call with me. I want them to talk about a project with me. I want them to hire me, right? And so at each one of those kind of milestones for myself, I struggled to kind of figure out how to achieve that. And once I kind of, again, iterated, tested, tried new things, figure out what worked or what kind of set of strategies would work, then I would move on to the next one and kind of struggle there and then work through that. So it was really interesting because I felt like by the time I had kind of worked through all of those things and figure out a really great process, COVID happened. And I kind of had to start all over and figure out, how can I do this in this really different environment? And still, I mean, my approach again is like, I want this to be personal. I want this to be empathetic. So how can I do that? Especially March, April, there was a lot of fear about kind of coming off too strong and being too salesy. So I've had to work through those kinks a little bit since then. And now when I look back at all of the pitches that I've sent, like in terms of stats or in terms of progress that I've made, like I get a response same day, usually within an hour, usually within a few minutes. And it is a really similar response to Belinda of like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I need. You've iterated exactly how I feel, even if I didn't know how I felt at that time. And that's been really, I mean, a good feeling to validate how I've tried things in my process. But I think most of all, even when we haven't moved forward on a project, it's started a relationship, it's opened the door. And these are people that I will hopefully work with in a year or 2 years or whatever makes sense for that relationship.
And that's right. It was a memorable spark that created a hook that you can nurture into something else. So this kind of proactive marketing isn't just about the one time. It's not about the conversion on that one email. And obviously there's prep work that goes into it, because we talk about cold pitching, but effective cold pitching is actually warm pitching. And, you know, there is a lot of work that goes into it. And we're going to talk about your masterclass in just a minute, where you're going to break down your process. But I think while we're casually talking about cold pitching, it's really important to rewrite that language a bit and think about it as proactive marketing, proactive relationship building, and not all relationships are cemented in that one moment, which is really important to know. So before we talk about your masterclass, which I want to remind everyone, I might not have even said this. Your masterclass is something you're doing for free. There's nothing on the back of it yet. We're working on that in Confident. No, but it's a no pitch event. Bree's just like, this is something that really works for me. I'm going to show you all how I do it. So I'm going to be, there's a link to that in the comments, and I'll be talking about that some more. But can you share a few little key elements to your successful outreach campaigns?
Yeah. Ironically, or maybe not, it's very similar to the copywriting process, right? It starts with research, understanding who your audience is, getting to know them, what's their language, how do they talk about themselves and their goals and their problems. And I actually tend to lay out my cold pitches a little bit like a long form sales page, not quite as long, obviously. But my goal is to kind of, like you were saying, move someone through the awareness process. I spent a lot of time on pain. Well, I spent a lot of time agitating that pain before I present a solution. And obviously I'm presenting myself as the solution. And when I first started doing this, I didn't really have any fancy names to drop. I didn't really have any great portfolio samples that I felt comfortable sharing. So I started doing this without any credibility markers, without any authority building. So it was really just, how well can I use this email to kind of emulate the kind of copy that I can write for somebody, really get into somebody's pain points and articulate what that solution is. And probably the biggest thing that I iterated on, and I still iterate on, is the call to action. I want this to be something that is a big enough ask that they're making like a micro commitment or like a micro yes to me, but not so big that it scares someone away. And that goes back to the research. Like, what do you know about the person or the company that you're reaching out to? How do they typically have conversations with vendors or contractors or whomever? How can I make that connection as easily as possible? Is there a way where I can add value in the call to action, right? All of those types of questions are basically what I've grappled over for the last 8 months.
And it was great because it's one of the things that we talked about in the Confident Copywriting coaching call that I instantly saw in your call to action, because you were saying everyone's reading, everyone's replying, and then I say, let's jump on a call, and everyone's like, no, thanks. Now, some people love jumping on phone calls. It is what they prefer to do. They want to get out of the inbox. They want to get on the phone. But when we were talking, I'm like, I got 2 kids. I got 2 courses. I got a membership. I got a dog and a husband and a life, and I am not getting on the phone unless someone needs to go to hospital. And that's the kind of thing you can find out about your ideal client. How do they want to take the next step? And that's getting deep into understanding who it is you're talking to, and not only what they're struggling through, but what's a no-brainer next step for them. And something else you said you identified the blocks at each stage, and then you looked at working on them. And that's another thing about when you're looking at your marketing, it's not just like, oh, I tried this thing and it didn't work, so I'm not going to try any of it again. It's like, well, that bit worked and that bit worked, but that bit's not working. So what's the problem here? How can I solve it? Is it specific to that person, or is it specific to the way I'm doing this? And that's really an important way to think about your marketing, because there's so many, this is how 10 ways to do this and 10 social media posts you can just swipe, and here's a template that you can just use. But you've got to put that strategy behind it, and it's in the customization that it really starts to come. So, I want to commend you for not only realizing that investor emails probably aren't the right ones to use, but taking it a next step. So let's tell everyone about your masterclass, which I said in the comments here, I've got the dates with all the time zones. All the time zones, because that's what we have to do in a modern global marketing world. But I've included a link as well. But tell everyone what you're going to go through.
So, this actually piggybacks really nicely on what you just said, because I was able to test a lot of this. As I mentioned, I work in these different spaces with different audiences. So I got to test with, the sort of bubbly course creator and the more like disruptive startup founder. to figure out like what works in each space. And the framework that I've kind of developed and sort of walked away from that with is what I'm going to be sharing in the masterclass. So really just walking through what are the steps that I take to draft a pitch, actually looking at some of the pitches that I've sent out and gotten varying responses from, and kind of analyzing and breaking down what is a commonality across them, what didn't work, what did, what has turned into a relationship, what's turned into a project, and then even some of the sort of tools and processes that I use to support the writing, the follow-up, although we won't get too far into that piece because that's a whole nother
It's another last class.
Yeah, so just everything from like figuring out who to pitch, how to find their information and get in touch with them, how to actually write that pitch, and optimize it so that you're likely to get a response.
It's going to be so good. I'm tuning in. I know pretty much every confident copywriter is tuning in as well. And so I really recommend you sign up. Now, for people who are like, then all these time zones, nothing works for me. Is there going to be a replay? Because that's always the first question. Is there going to be a replay?
Yes. So I have to say, when I was first planning this, I was like, no, like 10 people are going to show up and I'm just going to do it live on Zoom. But so many people have signed up and asked about a replay, because I understand there's a lot of time zone challenges. So yes, there will be a replay as long as I can figure out the technology and Zoom is on my side. We're going to be
I can help you get all the tech sorted, but I think having a replay is awesome because, this is the kind of stuff that so many people struggle with, and it's how we open the call. You got to shift your thinking from cold pitching is scary and I'm going to be in a black hole of rejection and failure, and this is just going to validate that story I tell for myself, and shift it over to, this is me getting proactive in front of my ideal customers and making a connection that turns into a relationship, that turns into work, because I can genuinely help them in some way. And I think conversation versus pitch, relationship versus conversion, like it's just a very different way to think about this. And I think if it's everyone, let it bubble and percolate, because this is a lot of the head junk and the mindset challenges that we come up and we bump up against all the time with so many things. And if we can get past them, the rewards are there. Because you said, like I know on your cold pitching masterclass page, you're like, I tripled my income in a pandemic with no clients, right? So it's the rewards are there for the bold and the proactive and people who do the work. So some people might not be ready for this, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely requires a lot of vulnerability because you are putting yourself out there. But I mean, I feel like it's so similar to kind of getting started in writing copy. Once you learn the framework and the process and understand like what each piece is doing, that's when you get to start to kind of test things out and subvert best practices and try things. And when I look at all of the gains that I've made, like again, like on a stat side, like 10K in a month and like 100% response rate. And I think it's something like 65% conversion rate on my pitches. But the biggest thing, honestly, that I feel like I've walked away with is just confidence that when I need clients, when I need projects, I have a process that I can follow that's going to help me create those relationships and start bringing in clients and pay my bills and
I love it.
All the things that I want copywriting to do for me.
That is so good. And it's that shift from going like, I'm just here waiting for people to contact me because I'm ticking some marketing boxes. That was me when I started out, and flipping it over to, I'm taking charge. And I've got a system now that means I can work with my ideal clients. And I bet like whenever I want. And it's taking ownership of that process. And I bet working with people who you actually want to work with, me, but working with people you really want to work with, that must make the days much more exciting and fun and interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, when I think back to why I started this, like I wanted to work with different clients. I wanted to work on different projects. I wanted to figure out like who I am kind of as a copywriter, what makes me special. Like, this is how I figured it out, is going through this kind of experimental process, pitching people, building my confidence, landing the clients that I really want to work with, working on the projects that I feel really excited about. So now when I look at, okay, where can my business go from here? It's no longer, oh my God, I just need to get one more client this month. It's like, what do like visionary, like how can I take my business to the next level? What do I really want to accomplish with copywriting this year or next year? And that's a really different space to be in, which is pretty wild.
It is amazing. And I know a lot of people watching this will be like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Because when you're stuck in worrying about the bills and the money and just getting one more client or 5 more clients or any clients, you say yes to anyone. And so it feels quite luxurious to be like, I don't need to worry about that anymore. I am now working on my movement, my vision, my ultimate goal, and where I've got to end up. So I applaud you. I think you're amazing. I just want to, Melanie in the comments has said, Bree's amazing. She graciously looked at a pitch for me, weighed in on it, and I landed the gig. Thank you. So I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you, Bree, for your time. The link to the masterclass is here. Thank you for sharing some of your process and what you overcame. And I think the masterclass is going to be awesome. So thank you, Bree.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
That's okay. And for everyone in For the Love of Copywriting, have an awesome day yourself, and we'll see you around the group. All right. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.